in the motion.
Yeah,
Maybe.
maybe that's an adverb.
Has any?
Yes, we've been going on for a while. Does anybody have any questions? Oh. You're the
Me, I'm the,
Yeah.
okay.
Early in the conversation, because you used the word discordant
Mhm.
regarding color, I wonder what that word means to you? And would there be any moment in which you would turn to that as an option?
I would, excuse me?
Turn to that as an option in your work?
Oh, discordance.
Yes.
Ah. Well, there's a difference between discordance and noise. And discordance is a bounded disjunction. So I want things not to sit too smooth too easily with other things. I want things to have both a contingency, possibility of movement, but also a general formal logic. So what I try not to do is create a situation where the discordance is subsumed into an overall movement, where just things sort of all kind of like go out and cancel each other out. So discordance is a kind of known disjunction, as opposed to just like something more or less random or chaotic.
Okay.
Abby.
It kind of goes along with the writing and the way that we read, and you talk about pathways, and in your work, do you have maybe a specific way you made them and move through the work? But do you have a way that you hope we see it, from up, down, left to right?
Well, no, I guess more or less, in a kind of circular way, in a way that that keeps moving around. It's actually a complicated dance, because on one hand I want your eye to settle on something long enough to look at it, and then also to move along. So of course, colors lead to colors, forms lead to forms, and then I'm always actually trying to balance things out diagonally. So if there's something up there, there's probably something down there. And so there's sort of like a continual crossing over. And in terms of seeing things in a plan versus an elevation, this is in some ways one of the great moves of later Cubism, particularly people like Leger or people like Le Corbusier or Rosenthal, where you'll see the top of the bottle and the bottom of the bottle at the same time. And that kind of, you even see that in something like the Bar de Folie Bergère, where something is behind something, and why is it that way? And that kind of torquing lends a kind of instability to the whole system, which should be anchored by other things. So how do you make things essentially dynamic? How do you create a dynamic perceptual quality without it just kind of flying off into self-canceling noise in some way? Yes?
Can you talk about your decision not to go to the edge and leave a margin in the space?
Ah, yes, I did. I'm glad you noticed. Well, it's because it allows it to float. It also makes, it allows the repetitions to be internalized, as opposed to being able to move out to something else. It allows one painting. Remember, the paintings are in each group are the same size, and so it allows a movement between one painting to another, but without creating a sense of, shall we say, forced cohabitation. And it also allows for a change in the tonal quality. So when they start up, but when the backgrounds are initially there, well, actually I start by painting the whole thing an undercoat of a palish gray, not white, but it's still going to be lighter than this. So this ends up kind of kind of settling things down, sort of like you take a stew and let it, or a roast and let it sit for a while.
It gives me a feeling of theatricality in all cases.
By theatricality,
Drama.
Oh, drama, okay.
I mean, I don't mean that.
You don't mean in the Michael,
superficial. No.
you don't mean in the Michael 3D kind of way.
No, I mean that it pushes it forward for me to see it in its own energy.
Oh, yeah, sure. It is great. I've always been interested in sort of the presentational, like, sort of like, done, there it is. Yes.
And Richard, it's been at least 15, if not 18 years since you decidedly separated your compositions from the border of the format.
Yes.
In the collage,
Yeah,
cut and pasted paper paintings that had been going all the way to the edge.
yeah,
Just very decidedly at a point,
yes.
you started exposing the linen, and you have been working with that margin ever since.
Well, shall we say it's a margin of error?
Well, it sort of unifies all the different parts in the painting.
Yeah,
At the same time, the unity is so dependent on the parts that you can't really reach a total unity.
no,
And so there's that contradiction between what's going on inside the painting and then what is on the outside of the painting.
exactly, right. And also, in addition, I pay a good deal of attention to the actual edges of the canvas. So you're standing back and you're actually seeing that linen, which has a very nice neutral color to it. And also there's just enough physicality to it, and the paintings are about as deep as the module, so that it all kind of I wouldn't give it a sort of well-made quality, a well-tempered quality.
I think the diagonal holds everything in place in a sense. It gives you an architectural hanger,
Right, and yet there are very few things that are actually diagonal.
even though
So you can move things around. I don't know, I just find it really savage when you can do it.
I have another question, Richard.
Yes,
Since you do the watercolors after the paintings,
sometimes.
these watercolors?
These watercolors were done, yeah, these were done after,
Okay, why do you do the watercolors?
because I like doing watercolors.
Okay.
And also,
That's a good one.
Because it's something we've talked about a lot as gallery goers have come and looked at the work.
they're not
They find it
studies.
very interesting that
Right.
the watercolors come after the paintings.
They're not studies for the paintings.
Right, correct.
But they're different ways of looking. Because watercolor does different things than oil paint, and it just has. I just like doing them. And also, often when I'm done with a painting, I'm so sick and tired of it. I just want to do something different. So, yes.
So, two things. So why don't you use gouache instead of watercolor?
That's too hard.
Too hard.
No, I've done gouache before.
Okay,
It's
because
sort
it
of-
seems closer to the oil painting.
It does.
So maybe you want to get away from that.
Well, I did a bunch of gouaches for the monochromatic things, sort of things that would look like this but are
Right.
one thing. And the gouaches have a particular look, and I wanted that kind of fresco-like look that they have. But watercolors have a more fluid quality to it, and you can see through them, and they have a transparency, whereas gouache by its nature is opaque. And I never, of course, never put white in watercolor.
Right. It's not supposed to.
No,
That's
no.
My favorite quote this week is from Louis Pasteur, "Accidents favor the prepared mind."
That's a good one.
And I think sometimes it's translated as chance. Accidents favor chance. Or chance favors accidents.
I'm trying to remember that.
You could just Google Louis Pasteur said. But the other thing I was thinking, when we were talking about writing and painting, I mean, and I'm sure you've thought of this, that writing you experience in a different way, in a linear way, and not all at once. And your paintings, you can decide how to look at them, move around and see them all at
Well,
once,
that's-
see in parts. So it's a very different kind of experience, if that's the right word.
It's true, but when you're writing about art, you're writing about something that you perceive, you know, all at once in a linear way. So and also if you're writing about more than one work, you actually in some ways you see art in a linear way. If you look at an exhibition or you look at art historically, so you do see things, one thing after another. But there's no other way to write. Any more questions?
You want more questions?
Well, yeah, actually, I'm curious about, I know you've worked in paper and watercolor makes sense to me because it's so fast after doing these really slow oil paint. And that, to me, I love oil paint. So is there a depth of quality that you feel you get in oil paint you wouldn't get, let's say, using acrylic?
Well, I don't use acrylics as such. I used acrylics for many years in the collage paintings.
These are all oil.
These are all oil. With the work that I did up till, in fact, I did it up until the beginning of 2018, and I still have some stretchers ready to go if I so wish. But what I would do is I would take rice paper, and I would take transparent paint and soak it into the rice paper, then rip it and cut the rice paper and put it on. So it didn't look like acrylic. It looked more like a fresco or like gouache. And so I had to use that because it was the only way I could collage on it. I couldn't do it with anything else. And so it was, I mean, if you think these are laborious, which they are, I mean, the collage paintings were 3 times as laborious. I mean, fun in a nice way, but this is, I don't know, there's just something about oil paint that has a lovely viscosity to it when it's done, and also a depth to it. And I particularly like the range of color that you can get, because for me, I'm trying to sort of get colors that are both evocative of things and evocative of flavors and evocative of smells, but also evocative of time periods. I want to get a sort of sense of like the 20s, 30s in this, which I think it was a time of both optimism and crushing pessimism. So I think it's an interesting sort of thing. Yes, yeah.
Do you paint them one at a time?
Yes. Yeah, I can't multitask, but I can do one thing at a time, reasonably consistently. Sort of like the one foot in front of the other foot and you get all these things done. So, sooner or later you get them done.
Do you ever abandon them?
No,
Come back to them later?
no. I hope not. No, I don't know. I just kind of do them, and I figure it'll work out okay.
Have you ever abandoned a painting? Or a series of paintings that you thought you were interested in and
No.
no?
Yes, sure.
Do you ever have to rework sections, or do they build directly to that set?
Very, very, very rarely have I done that. There was one that I put a little square in. Sometimes I'll add something to it. I can't take anything away, but I can put something on top of something.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like this is going to go here, boom.
Yeah. Well, of course.
And the oval will be here.
Oh, the shapes can't really move. But sometimes I'll change a color. If the color doesn't work. Yeah, that'll happen. Although I try to kind of get rid of it. I try to change the color while it's still wet, as opposed and try to get rid of it, because otherwise if you start painting over things in oil, you run into technical troubles. You don't want
No,
to-
that's one of the things that mesmerizes me, is the directness of it.
Yeah.
That you're gonna live here, boom.
Yeah, there it is.
The
It's there.
decisiveness.
Well, that's how you, I mean, I think if you have a great deal of complexity, the way, and these are pretty complex, and yet yet you can sort of take each part of it and look at each part separately, you have to be reasonably declarative about what you do.
Well, I think that's probably the advantage of the toolbox used to be.
Yeah.
We know when we need to say yes, maybe, no.
Yeah, more or less right. Any more questions? Yes.
Have you ever used an assistant?
Never.
Good.
Never in my life. As opposed to other people. For a number of reasons. One, because they can't do it any better than I can. And two, I don't like to have people around when I'm working.
Exactly.
I don't have to want to talk to them, make them lunch. And I don't, I like to talk, as you can see.
Yeah.
And yet I don't want to be distracted. So and also I don't know what I'm doing at a particular time. So okay, if I could, sort of like a pet. I don't have any dogs or anything, but if I could make a dog disappear or appear when I wanted to, then it would be fine. So if I can make an assistant appear and disappear, that would be okay. But they just don't like to do that, They don't like to be dematerialized. So anyway, no. I mean, structures get made, but that's not the same thing. Yes, it's really.
I have a kind of a big question.
Okay.
These paintings, as you said, you wanted them to have a 20s, 30s quality.
Yeah.
But they're not nostalgic at all.
No.
And then there was some conversation about the digital as well. And so I'm wondering what you think the place of painting is in terms of, do you think it's a modernist practice, or do you think that it is, we're not in that period anymore, even though the language of your painting seems modernist, but at the same time they're clearly made today and clearly have influences of ideas and so on that are not necessarily modernist.
I think modernism has in some way been subsumed into history, and therefore it's something that's available, and it's something that you can use, and we're all influenced by it. Of course, the parameters of modernism are, shall we say, contested. It's hard to say where it ends, easier to say where it begins. But if you, in some way, think of modernism not so much as a style, but as a way of approaching the condition of modernity, then that kind of modernism is always with us, because we live in a world of modernity. But in terms of it as a particular historical practice, I think it's something that just fits into the realm of a model, something you can take and you can draw from. But unless you are very consciously retardé, even then, that still puts you off at a distance. You can't help but being of your time.
Well, I recently went to see a show of a young painter, and for some reason he was not capable of limiting his practice to one genre, so he had, monochrome paintings like at Reinhardt, he had quasi-landscape, and then text-based work. So for some reason he could not, in his mind, the idea of being a painter today meant that you had to dabble in all these different genres in order to continue as a painter, and not necessarily work it out within one genre.
Oh, I think that's a really interesting point, because I think it's easy to sort of be a flaneur and sort of skim the surface.
Right.
But it's much harder to take something that's seems to be unpromising and resistant, and go deeper and deeper into it. And I think that's what I'm trying to do, and that's what I think many serious painters are really trying to do. I mean, the stuff that's ostensibly boring is ultimately more interesting than something that's interesting. I've always had problems with things that are too interesting. I always remember this Bugs Bunny cartoon where Bugs Bunny there's a monster that's chasing him, and suddenly Bugs sort of transforms into this female character, and it was like a hair stylist, and she is putting in firecrackers into the instead of permanent things, and he said, "Oh, monsters! They must have such interesting lives. It's so interesting to be a monster." I just kept thinking, like, that's interesting. I don't like interesting. You're gonna get your head blown off if you do it.
Okay then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.